What is up, everybody? We Rolling Audio here today on episode 81 of The Harder Show. What is going on? I hope you are doing absolutely fan-freaking-tastic. Thank you so much for tuning in, clicking that play button on today's episode of the podcast. I sit down with my good buddy, Mr. Adam Lintlop, 2027's Man of the Year, I might add, and we talk about something that I think most people can relate to. I know I could. We were kind of just sitting on my couch, kind of BSing, and he kind of brought this up to me, and we were talking about it. And I said, you know what? We're going to do a podcast because I think this is a very interesting topic. I think Adam's a fun guest to have on the podcast because he is not someone who normally is into that kind of thing. He can be a bit of a shy guy, so I think he's a really interesting guest on the podcast. And we talk about feeling old and what makes us feel old and that kind of thing, given that the two of us are 25 now. Some people are going to go, that's not old, blah, 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 blah. That's not the point. The point is we talk about things that are making us feel old, whether it's, someone who we work with or someone who we know or whatever the hell. It doesn't necessarily matter what it is or how it is, but it's why it makes us feel old. And I think it's a really funny topic. I think it's a great podcast. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it if you're into that kind of thing. I talk about, how some days I feel like an old man and that kind of thing, and that's just hilarious to me. I'm basically an 80-year-old living in a 25-year-old's body. So it's a fun podcast. Before I get into that, this is the last podcast I will be doing. That is before I send out the pre-order for the Harder Show t-shirts. Monday morning, I'm going to be getting ready to send out that pre-order. So if you would like a t-shirt, let me know right this exact second. Shoot me a message, say, TJ, I want a t-shirt. Here's what size I need. T-shirts are $25. They are a great high-quality Gildan t-shirt. Nice cotton, high thread count. Really great t-shirts. Obviously, they have the Harder Show logo on them, so it's a great-looking shirt. Black and white, really, really pops. If you guys would like one, you want to support the podcast, they are $25. All the money that is made on them is going right back into the show. I am personally not taking a penny for anything else but the podcast. So if you want to support the Harder Show, that's the best way to do it, folks. Thank you so much to everybody who has already pre-ordered a t-shirt. I will be getting the pre-order out to Mr. Jason Reese as soon as possible. And we're going to be doing it for real now. I am probably going to be ordering a couple extra t-shirts, just kind of have kicking around in case anyone does want them. And they weren't able to pre-order for whatever reason. I am going to make sure I have them kicking around. So definitely keep your eye out for that. Again, if you want a t-shirt, be sure to let me know. But with that aside, we're going to get into this Feeling Old podcast with my buddy, Mr. Adam Lintlop, 2027's Man of the Year. Let's get into it. All right, so we're hanging out today with my good buddy, Mr. Adam Lintlop, 2027's Man of the Year.
TJ, you brought that in perfectly because what we're going to talk about today is what makes us feel old. And you know what? Being man in 2027 makes me feel old because I'm going to be in my 30s. Who knows where I'll be at that point?
Well, hopefully we're both still around at that point. I mean,
yeah, hopefully the sun doesn't explode because technically that could happen.
We
could get hit by a meteoroid. Dinosaur, what happened made the dinosaur extinct could make us extinct.
It could happen.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really have an opinion or anything like that because I just that's scary science stuff, and TJ doesn't understand scary science stuff, so I just don't bother trying to understand it.
You sound like The Simpsons. It's like religion has to stay 50 feet away from religion at all times.
Is it science has to stay 50 feet away from religion or something?
I'm not sure. It's either or, but you know what? They should stay away from each other. Like I learned from South Park, like we learned from all shows, is in the one when they have to think of the best atheist group name, and that's what causes all the fights. God. And that makes me feel old. And like what we mentioned before, this podcast is going to be about what makes us feel old. Today, I read a post about South Park's World of Warcraft episode that I remember when it came out, and I've seen maybe 4 or 5 times. It makes me laugh. Is 10 years old.
That's insane. Like I can remember we were in high school when that episode came out, dude.
Yep.
What the hell? That was like grade. would have been grade, what, 10?
Yeah, 10.
Jesus Christ. We've been out of high school for 10 years. Well, not quite, but 8 years.
Yeah.
But, oh my God. So, something that's hilarious. Like, we both work with younger people sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Probably more me than you, I would assume.
A lot more. We do hire temps at my work, and we have a couple kids who are older. Like, one's... Like, we have a wide range. Like, we work with, the same with you, some people that are in their 50s, their 40s, their 30s. But we have two kids who are, one's 19, one's 18. I've never felt so old before until them. And I tell them, like, a good example to kind of go in there. I've watched Seinfeld a couple times, and I've seen a lot of their episodes. I remember those things, like the contest, and I was in the pool.
I'm out.
Yeah, and I made the jokes to them. They're like, what's that? I'm like, Seinfeld.
What's Seinfeld?
Oh, I was like... I didn't know what to say. I was like, I'm old.
I'm old. I am officially old. What gets me is that because there'll be the kids at my work who are like 16, 15. They're turning 16. That is a trip. Like the other day, I was on break. I'm talking to this girl sitting across from me. I was like, hey, how's it going? How are you? Good. Oh, yeah, we're just talking work or whatever. And I referenced something. I don't remember what it was, but it was something I thought like was pretty modern. And she looked at me like I had 10 heads. And I'm like, you probably weren't, like, do you even remember this? And then she says something to me that still to this day absolutely blows my freaking mind. She's like, well, like, I think, it happened in 2006 or something. She's like, I was only 6. I was like, I'm sorry, what? She's like, yeah, I was born in 2000. And I'm like, no, you weren't. That's not possible. If you were born in 2000, you'd be like 7. That like you like that's not even freaking possible.
No, time stopped in 2010. No, this is not.
I'll think back to stuff, and I'm like, that was like a couple years ago, and it was like 2006. Yeah, and I'm like, what the hell is going on?
There's always a couple events a year that makes me feel like that. One is Halloween, because I still remember going out trick-or-treating. I'm like, okay, you know what? Not so bad. The other one is prom, because, again, that's end of high school. And I'm like, and again, I live in Newcastle, so I always see the limos if I go through town. And again, I see all these people. I'm like, my God, I feel old.
Like, you think back, when was our prom? And I'm like, oh my God, that was 2009.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that was like, it's almost 10 years ago. Like, not quite, but like, pretty much almost 10 years ago. Really, 2016, but like, we're close enough at this point that I'm like, shit, like, what the hell is going on? When when prom happened, this past year at my work, like, there's obviously a bunch of kids that were going to prom. And like, I'm like talking to them, like, oh, like, you know, so like, you working this night? Oh no, it's prom. And I'm like, oh, like, I was like, okay. But something that messes me up, that's kind of on the same topic, is it's judging people's age, right? And it makes me feel even older when I met, because like, I'll be talking, like, there was a guy, he just started working in my building, and we chat, we always shoot shit, right? And I could tell by his like sense of humor and stuff that I'm like, okay, this guy's definitely at least in his 20s. I thought he was exactly my age, the way he was talking and the references he made and stuff. I'm like, he's like 25, 26.
Sorry, not aneurysm.
Not aneurysm. In aneurysm, we'd have a lot worse problems off, but he's got an aneurysm. Well, flipping burgers with an aneurysm. That wouldn't be a good time, folks.
So with his mannerisms, he felt older.
He feels like, you know, I'm like, he probably remembers the 90s somewhat. You know what I'm saying? Just, I don't know. And like, I mean, I don't even remember the 90s that much, but whatever. And I asked him something. And he's just like, oh, like, you know, like, no, I don't remember that. And I'm like, how old are you? He's like 20. I'm like, no, you're not. You're 25. Like, no, I'm not. And like, even we had a party a couple months ago, and one of our friends brought her new boyfriend around, and I was like, oh, guess how old he is? And I'm like, he's like our age or younger. Turns out he was like 5 years older than us, and I was like, what? Like,
I know.
It's just weird.
Yeah.
Like, I can't judge age at all. I'll be talking to people. And it's not like in a creep way where it's like, oh, that girl's got to be at least 18.
Exactly.
But I mean, it's just like, I'll be talking to like, even like, oh, like, you know, I was out and I ran into someone the other day. And like, oh, like, it was someone I knew from the shop, and there's this girl with him, with this young girl, and I'm like, oh, like, he's like, oh, this is my daughter, and I'm like, okay, now wait a second. When I knew you 2 years ago, your daughter couldn't even walk. He's like she could walk. She was like 3.
Yeah.
So now she's 5, and she's like walking around and like talking, and like I'm just like, no, bro, like nah.
No.
He's like, oh man, I can't believe it. Time flies. I'm like, no, but like no, like
you're like, no, time should not fly for me. And that's the one thing I always feel at family events is there's a couple second cousins I have, right? I love them all to death, right? But the one thing I remember as a kid, and I always found it odd when people were like, I remember when you were this tall. I'm like, I'm never going to be that guy. And then all of a sudden you're like, that's the first thing that pops to your mind. It's like, I remember when they were so small, and you're like, there's a couple. And again, with some of my family from New York, some of them aren't too far, but we see them maybe once or twice a year. And one of my second cousins is, I think, almost 3. And I just seen her progression from like being shy to more talkative. And like, you can actually talk pretty well to her. I'm like, no, this is not happening to me.
You are a child. You're a baby. It's like, well, it's like, even, like my old neighbors.
Yeah.
Like when they moved in, they were like 6, 7. And like now it's like the one, she's like her last year of college, and she's like, we'll message once in a blue moon, just like, hey, how's it going? And, I'm talking with her, and like, I'm just like, she's like, oh yeah, my last year of college. Like, and I'm like, no, you're not. You're like 12. Like, it's just, it messes me up so bad.
It does, because it's like, I remember having some neighbors, and they just had their problem. I'm like, no, I remember hanging out with your older brother, and you were like one of those kids that were just young, and you're there, you're like a young whippersnapper, and you're like, no. Stop making me feel old.
This is not happening. You are making me old.
Exactly. The one thing my coworker did that made me feel really old was I asked him about Friends. He's like, no, I've never seen that show. Wait, hold on. I think my mom watched the Friends. I was like, no, it's called Friends, not the
Friends. No, it's called Friends. Well, what messes me up too is like I referenced something from The Simpsons the other day, to kid I was working with, and like he's just like, the hell's The Simpsons? And I was like, bro, it's still on the air. He's like, yeah, but like no one's cared about The Simpsons for like 10 years. And like, I mean, I got mad, but at the same time I was like, I mean, he's not wrong. Like, and he's just like, dude, like, you are old. Like, and they will say, like, I'll talk to somebody, like I work with a couple people who are much older than me. One, he just started, he's 70. And like, he says to me the other day, oh, you make me feel old, And then like, flip side, the next day I'm working with a kid, and like, I said something, and he's just like, oh, old men say that. And I was like, screw, you don't know me, screw you.
And you just run off and start crying in the stall. You're
so mad. Oh my God. It's so funny. I get so offended. I'm like, you don't even know who I am. Like, I'm still young.
Yeah, exactly. There's one guy, and again, same guy from my work. And I had to name off all these shows, see if he knew any of them. I'm like, I will get 1. I think I got 1 out of 8. I'm like, nope, you can't do this. I'm like, you know what? We've got to fire you. You're just making me feel cool. We've got to
fire you.
And it's the funny thing is, when I first started, I was the youngest one there, and I was only 25. And all of a sudden, they hired these 2 guys. And again, they're great workers and everything, but they just make me feel old. I'm like, oh my God. And the one thing, speaking of your job, is I couldn't believe how old I felt when I went to that Wendy's again. Because I still worked there for a little bit, right?
Yeah, so that's true. You did work there for a little while.
So, like, when I go in there and I see some of these kids, I'm like, some of them have, like, their braces in and, like, everything like that. Yeah. And I'm like, I remember, too, like, I think, like, even though I was a little older when I started working there, I remember working with this 16-year-olds, this 17. But, again, they were all still around my age. We still kind of went to the same high school, or I was at least in high school when they were in high school. But now it's like, seems like 2 generations.
It is, and it's freaky.
Yeah.
Like you'll and especially people like that. Like, it's funny how like there's people who have they've been around there forever.
Yep.
So they've seen these people come and go. But then when some of these kids come back, like to visit or whatever, it's like this weird thing where like there's this other 16-year-old kid on cash. He's just kind of standing there. And you're talking about all these old times, and it's like, I always like to try and like say to them, because I talk to everybody there, right? Like if I'm there and I'm on break with a bunch of kids or whatever,
you're not like, hey kids, get out of my chair.
Like, oh, get out of my goddamn chair. But the one day, I came, I was helping there was a kid helped me put away the order,
right?
And like he was kind of moving like really slow, and he'd put a box away and then stand there and wait for me to show him where to put them. You know what I mean? Like, just it's kids of, and this is gonna make me sound really old, but I don't care. Like kids of the generation now that are working, they have a different mindset than us. They've been brought up differently than us for certain things.
Yeah, because even like near the end of high school, I had a cell phone. I think maybe I was 17, but it's like that's when cell phones started to really. And all of a sudden now it's like every kid in their, like any kid from like grade 1 and on has cell phones.
I saw a kid the other day, couldn't have been older than 7. She walks up to the cash at Wendy's, orders her food, pulls out her wallet, hands her a 20, and I could clearly see there was more money in that wallet. Then she pulls out her iPhone, calls her mom who is in the car, and is like, yes, mother, I got this or whatever, thank you, and hangs up the phone, checks her makeup in the phone. Yes, she had makeup on. And like she's acting like she's like 30. Like, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah. And like, I was like, when I was your age, like, not only did I not have a fucking phone, even remotely, but I'm like, I would not walk into a building and order food by myself and stuff. And it's like, it's this independence thing some of them have, but it's, I can't hate on the kids for it, right?
No. So I like how we're brought up.
Yeah, I like the kids. And I'll say to them, one of the first things, like first time I work with somebody, or like sometimes the kids help me do the order,
right?
And I'll say to them like, okay, I'm going to show you everything once. Pay attention. When you're done doing something, keep doing stuff. Don't stand around and wait for me to tell you what to do next, because I've already shown you. I'm like, it bothers me a lot. Don't go and sit down when you're done doing something, because I'll smack you. Like it bothers me. And they're just like, oh, like they don't understand. It's not their fault. And that's what I finally had to realize. I'm like, you know what? Some of these kids, like, I don't want to keep hating on these kids, but like, I've trained a couple kids, right? Since I've been there.
Well, some kids I find they have the stop and go mentality, and that's a lot of things. Is you go until you're done, you wait, and then you go again. Us, it's like we always have to keep going. Yeah. And again, there is a flaw with that, because then you can keep going and you could be doing stuff wrong, but you just keep going because you're not supposed to stop. And you're like
moving.
And again, it's like, again, the generation before, it's like, you can do no wrong, like the 60, 70-year-olds, like even some 50-year-olds. It's
There's
like
some badasses who just,
they can't do no wrong. They're like, don't trust me. I know how to do everything. It's like, I used to change my own car. Like, I could change the transmission out of my car with one hand tied behind my back. Yeah. So do not tell me how to take out a garbage bag. It's like,
well, I mean, luckily, like the like one guy I was talking about, he was 70. Like he's the one kind of guy who he's like, he'll take like direction from me and stuff if he needs to and that kind of thing. So that's good. He's not like that, but like I would train these kids, and there's one kid in particular, I'll never forget this as long as I live. And like I said, I think that's just a generational thing, and maybe I sound like a grumpy old man. I don't know, but it boggled my mind.
So we have to change the podcast to the Grumpy Old Man.
Yeah, the Grumpy Old Man podcast with TJ.
Next, he'll talk about his back problems. I swear to God, I have.
I mean, I do. I'm pretty sure I have the body of like an 80-year-old dude. Like,
I don't know how many times you're like, oh my God, I need to ice my feet. I'm like, what?
Ice my ankle. I need to ice my foot or my ankle. Because I always like roll my ankle at work and stuff. Like, it's so funny. I came in the other day and I went to go lift something up, and I was like, oh, my back. Like, I actually hurt my back, right? And someone I work with who's older than me, they were like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, you're 25. Suck it up.
Yeah. And they're like, suck it up. I'm like, that is why you have arthritis.
Yeah, that's why you have arthritis, dumbass. Like, I'm trying to fix this.
And that's one thing, just speaking of that we didn't have as a kid, now it happens all the time, is texting elbow, where when you're having your cell phone up too high and you're texting, you're like, you can actually get soreness from your elbow. You're like, Is that a thing?
That's ridiculous.
And two, there's some things that come up that just makes me feel old, like the Harry Potter. I remember when the first Harry Potter came out, and again, like we talked about earlier, that it actually came out on VHS, and that made me feel.
Like we remember VHS was the main way we watched movies when we were kids for a long time.
And see, it's changed. It's like people used to be like, oh, you would have to record stuff. Now it's like you could record stuff on a DVD player. Now everything's digital. It's like it's not even like DVDs are becoming a thing of the past. Everything's
Sorry, you finished your point.
It's like everything's becoming digital. Everything's getting downloaded. It's like there's a comedian, and I always kind of laugh how he talks about is that you used to have photo albums when you were a kid and everything like that, right? Well, now when you got older, you would end up taking a bunch of photos on all your family vacations, and you'd pretty much have a different computer or hard drive for each one. It's like, this was my 2006 Disney vacation. This was my 2000 Cuba picture thing. And it's like, and it's kind of coming in like that. Like when cell phones used to be like, for a flip phone, it was like $300-$400. Now you can get it for $25, and you're like, I don't want a flip phone.
Yeah. Now, whereas like I'm in a situation now where like I'm like seriously thinking about going back to like a flip phone. Like I've just had enough of this smartphone bullshit because of the prices and stuff like that. And I was talking with a kid about it the other day, and they have like the latest iPhone and like unlimited data and all this stuff, and like they're sitting there like doing all this stuff, and I'm like, man, like I'm going back to a flip phone. And he just looked at me and he's like, I don't remember flip phones. Like I do not remember what a flip phone is. He thought I meant the sliding one.
Oh my god.
And I'm like, no, bro, I'm talking this. And I like made the gimmick, and he's like, I don't know those phones. But what's interesting is like we're at the age now where we saw not the beginning of the internet, but we saw like it like kind of come into its own.
Well, we honestly were part of the big explosion, because I remember MSN when we first got MSN. I was still on dial-up, and I remember my mom being like, hey, look, you can only go in for an hour because no one can call us, and two, you can't even leave a message, and you're like, oh, but mom, and then you're like,
talking to my friends, mom, God, get out of my room.
Like MSN was like the new fad, and you're like,
thing to do.
Yeah, you're like, go on your computer, and the first thing of instant messaging, #feeling old. So
#feeling old.
So anyway, so you're on MSN on your dial-up, and you're like, oh my god. Nowadays, it's like, and this is the one thing maybe that bugs me about my generation, is that people go to people's houses, and what is the first question they'll ask you?
Do you have Wi-Fi?
What is your Wi-Fi password? And I'm like, are you kidding me? And I know people who have parties, and that's the first thing people will ask for. Can I have your Wi-Fi password? I'm like,
see, I'd say no. I'd be like, no, you can't. Like, you're here to hang out with me. You're here to sign your phone. Because if you're here to sign your phone, then you might as well leave.
Exactly, and that's the one thing. Like I've seen that happen so many times. And again, it's like back then, it's like we didn't have Wi-Fi. It's like we didn't have this, we didn't have that. Like, and again, it's like maybe that made us a little bit better. But now we've kind of turned into we need the internet.
Oh, dude, I'm so like, okay, I am at the point now where like if I'm sitting at home and I don't have great internet out here, and I would rather rack up my phone bill to use my data to just surf Facebook than not do it and save $20.
Exactly.
And it's like, what is wrong with me?
Exactly. And two, that's the other thing, is that like at home when there's no power, it's like, you remember as a kid, you'd be like, if it was a sunny day, you'd just go out or something like that, and you're like, or two, like now we're a little bit older, so now it's like we come home from work and there's no power, you're like,
how am I going to do with myself?
Yeah, like, exactly. You're like, okay, I can't cook or anything like that. That's fine. I'm not that hungry. You're like, okay, I can't watch TV. I'll watch net. I will play on the X. Okay, I'll read a book. Oh, damn, it's on my Kobo.
Kobe. It's on my Kobe.
Kobe. Or I remember this because I was actually happy. So I was at work and my phone was a little undercharged. I'm like, I'll just charge it at work. I was glad I did, because as soon as I got home, there was no power. Well, my iPad is dead. The only thing I had is my phone. And again, I don't have unlimited data. I have 200 megabytes. So I'm like, crap.
Jesus Christ, that's not a lot of data.
No.
I go through that in a day.
Exactly. So I'm like, the only thing I check on there is like my MSN when I'm out, right? So all of a sudden I'm like,
You mean your Facebook?
Yeah.
My MSN when I'm out.
Sorry,
bro.
my Messenger.
Oh,
yeah. Sorry.
MSN. I was like, MSN has an app and it's still active. I was like, yo.
When I'm at work, I actually read MSN.com.
Yeah.
They do have an MSN.com.
Interesting.
So anyways, but yeah, so I'm just like, what do I do with myself? And that's why I feel so old, because now I'm like, you know what, I can still do some of the stuff because I'm got some of the classic stuff, but like kind of like what happens with kids these days, they really don't know what to do with themselves. It's like, I don't know how many times I've gone someplace and their parents just give them an iPad. I'm like,
yeah.
And you know what, I worked hard and I got my iPad. I'm like, okay, you know what, I enjoy this a lot. It's just easier, but I like to see these kids that are 4 or 5. I'm like, and I know how much they cost. I'm like, I worked hard to pay for that iPad, and you're giving these kids that are 4 or 5. I remember, like, when I was a kid, my parents didn't trust me with anything because I was some dumb little kid who would drop something.
I'd like hold a remote, let alone an iPad.
Exactly. You're like, oh, that's not like a couple car insurance payments or anything like that. You're like,
that's insane. But it's like I used to see it all the time at the shop. Parents would come in with their kids, and they're like, "Oh, can we get the Wi-Fi password?" And I always said no. I was like, no, I'm sorry. Like, we don't have unlimited internet. We don't give it out. Like, we strictly use it for the business. I'm sorry, but it's just not. Well, what the hell are my kids supposed to do? Be kids? Kids don't need something to do. They can, I don't know. You're in a guitar store. I'll entertain them. Like, and it was just like, you know, and then they tell the kids, oh, you can't play on your iPad. And like, they would just like, it would be like literally their entire world has come to an end. And it's this technology dependence, but it's also, I find personally, a lack of independence that I see so much now. And I mean, I'm not sitting here saying I'm this independent person, whatever the fuck. I'm not saying that, but.
Well, like you just said that you're sitting at home spending $20 on internet just because you have none.
Just because my internet isn't working that night. So, I mean, I'm just as bad for, but like I'll sit and play friggin' my N64 all night. I don't care too, right? So it's a flip side. I'll sit and record podcasts all night, right? I could live without it but it's the fact that I have it.
Yeah, and well, that's
it's
the
so
thing.
easily accessible.
But there's two different things. Is you can live without internet to an extent, but then when you have no power, you're like,
yeah, me with no power, I hate it. Like if Sam's home, it's great, it's fine. We'll play Phase 10 or something or whatever. Like we'll figure it out. But like if there's no power and I'm home alone. Oh my God, I hope the laptop's charged up because I'm just going to podcast. Like which is nice. It's nice to have a hobby like this where like I can like.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Another thing is people are like, oh, you need to get hobbies. It's like nowadays almost everything's digital. Yeah. And two, like the do-it-yourself projects. A lot of people, and that's the one thing that I'm a little disappointed, which makes me feel old, is creativity. It's like you look at some of the things that have changed, right? Coming out with the 4K TVs or even the transitions of 360, the Blu-ray players, the different DVD players, and now you have like these things are so different, and you're like, okay, you know what? You kind of lose some of the people's like ideas. They're like, hold on, like we talked about Halloween one, right? And think of your own costumes. Now all you need to do is search on the internet and look at. I remember when I was a kid, we had to go to the local library and try to figure stuff out and do like research. Now you're like. You Google how to do this. And two, like, and it does come in handy, like YouTube. I still remember, like, I didn't use YouTube that often until like a few years ago. And then kids are like talking about, oh yeah, you've heard of this, oh my God, tuber or whatever their technical term are they? A YouTuber? I guess that would be the technical.
Yeah, just people who like literally have made their living on YouTube.
Yeah, but
making videos
I thought there was a term for them. I guess they're just called YouTubers.
YouTubers, that's what I've always called them.
See, and that's why I feel old again. It's like there's all these different terms, like the Woman Crush Wednesday and all that. And there was one person I mentioned that to her, and she's never heard that before. I'm like, oh my God, thank you. I think I love you. It's like
I want to marry you.
It's like, but then you hear people who say like all these random terms, like. I'm a gamer. You're a gamer. I play with a couple gamers. They've never heard of this. The only reason why I hear them is I play League of Legends. And, of course, there are some young kids on there. Like, I'll give you some example. I'm tilting. Do you know what that means? That means I'm on the verge of rage quitting. Like, I'm on the verge. Yeah.
I'm tilting, boys. Like,
and then pretty much people say I'm tilting. I'm like, they're about to snap. I'm boosted. Ever heard that one?
No.
That is... it used to be a term where you're having your buddy or someone that intentionally lose, so you get better kill streaks and all that, right?
Sure.
But now it's turned into I'm turning into a rage monkey. Like,
so it's basically just literally I'm getting angry.
Yeah, and there's like all these terms like tilted, boosted, and all that. You're like, what? Like,
what are you talking about?
Like fleek is another one that's
become... fleek. That's Brandon said that to me once. The producer Brandon Bowden, producer of the Hotter Show, and I literally was like, if you ever say that to me again, I'm gonna smack the shit out of you. I'm like, where did you even get that? But something that's funny is, whenever I would hang around at the shop with some of my co-ops, especially Mav, shouts to Mav Simard, and when he came in the podcast, he's someone like he goes crazy with the lingo because he knows it pisses me off. Like, he'd walk in the store every morning, hey, what's up, fam? And I'd be like, if you call me fam one more time, I'm gonna smack the shit out of you. And he's like, what? We're not fam? You're not my fam? You don't like, you're not my bro? And I'm like,
fam?
Because he'd be like, what? You call people brother? Because I'm like, hey, what's up, brother? How's it going? Like, and he's just like, it's the same thing. I'm like, no, it's not. It's stupid. And he's like, it's the same thing. He'd be like,
But it's the generational gap. Like, like another one. I don't know if you've ever heard this, and I heard this in a movie not that long ago, but apparently it's very thing. Hondo P.
What?
Hondo P. That means I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I'm like, what?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
I'm just like,
you've completely lost me.
Yeah. Literally the catchphrase is, I'm going to be Hondo P with you.
I'm going to be Hondo P with you, fam.
Yeah, pretty much.
All fleek. And when he when Matt was on the podcast, he was like, I was like, can you end off just giving me some like random teenage lingo? And he literally was like, he was saying all this stuff and like, yeah, we're gonna go on that good there, fam. Holla. Like I'm like, okay, I know what that means.
Yeah.
But like, he's saying these random things. And I was just kind of like, all right, well, salam alim and ding dong to you too there, buddy. Like, because I just like, I have no idea what they're saying. These kids will say things to me.
So pretty much it's like, in our generation, Latin is a dead language. Nowadays, English is a dead language.
Yeah. All right, guys, just want to take a quick second here to give a big shout out to the first ever sponsor and big time supporter of the Hotter Show, my man, Mr. Jason Reese over at Jaybird Digital Arts. Now, what exactly does Jason do? Well, if you guys need any kind of logos, t-shirts, posters, album design, tickets, photo manipulation, you guys still with me? Advertising, business stationery, mailers, brochures, fine art, and literally anything else you can think of, Jaybird Digital Arts can create it. No project is just a generic template, and every single job is a new opportunity to create something unique. Jason's done all the Hotter Show logos, t-shirts, banners, and even a meme here and there, so I can promise you that you will love and be inspired by what Jason comes up with. You can find him on the web at www.jaybird, that's Jaybird, digitalarts.com. Or you can find him on Facebook under the Jaybird Digital Arts handle, as well as on Instagram. If you happen to use his services, be sure to let him know that TJ sent you. And it's funny because I've noticed lately, maybe it's because I'm back at the plaza, but like I'll hear different phrases from different languages in English. And the one that some of them that like mess me up, and I always say, like I'll say things like I'll say, I go, no worries, man, and like people are like, that's an Australian thing. Oh, no worries, mate. And lately I've been pulling out how you going, and I don't know why. Another Australian, how you going, mate? Like I don't know why, but like these people, and like you've got and I'll hear kids say these things, and it sounds so weird to me. But then I'll go up to a kid, and I'm like, oh, hey, saying like going up to a kid and saying, hey, what's up? Like literally, like sometimes they'll just like be like, nothing.
Yeah, and that.
But then you're like, oh, like what's up, fam? And they'll give you this stupid answer, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
what
they're like, oh man, like let's prop that. I'm like. Okay.
So that's not even a thing anymore. I have not seen any kids under the age of like 18 propping each other.
No.
Doing my work, I taught the whole too sweet thing too.
Yeah.
You know what that is, right?
Yeah, it's from NWO.
Yeah, me and Matt and Woody always do that now.
Yeah, well, I always thought like when you guys do that, that's just because you guys have colds and you guys can't kiss each other on the lips.
Yeah, either or.
I figured, I thought I actually
me and Matt basically at the point now we just open kiss each other on the mouth.
Yeah. See, you got to be like me. You got to Eskimo kiss everyone. Sorry, I don't think that's politically correct. I think it is Norwegian person kiss. Anyways,
this is not a politically correct podcast.
Yeah. So a nose kiss. So when I do a nose kiss to someone, right? I'm like, I'll do that as a goofy thing, or the Italian kiss. Then you guys just do the llama kiss.
Yeah, the llama kiss. But like I thought this one guy, he had it too sweet, right? Because he's a little older than me, so I thought it was funny. And this kid saw us doing it the one day, and he's like, that must be an old person thing, right? Because the one kid always makes fun of us. And I'm like, so what do you guys do? What do you guys do? Like, what is your thing, right? It's a generational thing where like I'll see this all the time, and I think I talked about this with Anthony when he was on the podcast. Something that messes me up, and it makes me feel very, very old because I don't understand it, and it creeped me out for a long time. Now it's cool, I get it, but it'd be kids, and they'd be like, thanks, buddy. Like, I'll see you on Monday. Heart. Oh, thanks so much for the support, fam. Love you. Heart. Like, or like, love this picture of you, fam. Heart.
Oh, the number of people that use emojis. I'm just like, there's some emojis I use, right? But then I see some people, they have like emojis all over the place. I'm like, I don't understand what you mean. I feel like I should go back, like, study Egyptian culture and figure out hieroglyphics. Because that's what I feel like when you do these, when they do all these emojis, you're like, smiley face, cucumber,
smiley face, cucumber, eggplant. What talking about?
Yeah, and then people are like, "Oh, eggplant means male genitalia." I'm like,
"Okay, sure, yeah."
I'm like, "Okay," and then they're like, "Oh yeah, this one means that you're upset while your friend is away." I'm like, what?
How do you even? And the thing of this that messed me up about the whole heart thing was like, I was like, I would see like, and like, they'd be like, "Oh, I like see you Monday, fam." Heart, and like it boggled my mind because I'm like, no, like when you send a heart to somebody, that is like an endearing thing. Like I send hearts to Sam all the time. I might send a heart to like my grandma, my mom, if I'm talking to them on the messenger or whatever. Yeah. And like, that's it. You're not going to see me send a heart to
Brandon Bowden.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen. Like I think the one time I commented something on like Beyond the Wall saying, I was like, "Oh, much love, guys," or whatever. And like, they're like, "Oh, thanks, buddy, heart." And I was like, I get it now, but what did it for me was I think it was I want to say it was Ali from Out of My League, and I kind of had to apologize to him afterwards because he tagged me in something. I think it was an end of the year post. He was like, "Oh, I want to thank TJ at Gigs Music for everything he's done for the band. Thanks so much, man." And like a heart, and I was like, I don't what is he putting a heart? I don't get it because again, to me, that's like, I love you.
Yeah, and you just go to him. It's like, look, I'm glad to help you, but dude,
no need for the hearts, man. Like, yeah. I kind of said that to him, and he was like, "Oh, okay." Like, to him and his generation, that's like me basically going, "Yeah, I don't want you to like be. I'm going to start being like, you should just be a dick to me instead." Yeah. To them, that's like a happy face.
Yeah, exactly. And dude, it's like it's changed. It's right. It's like. It used to be just a normal emoji. Like some people would get a little complex and they put like the little, pretty much make the eyes and the nose and everything like that. Now it's getting more complex with the hearts and all of a sudden you have blow kisses and all that. You're like, and like people just do it normally. Like in normal conversations, I'm like, no, I guess that's my old man in me because I felt like I only did that to like close friends or like people who I really liked at that point or people who I was just joking around with, being like,
"Oh, sure, yeah,
I miss you, Bookie Wookie," but people are like, now they like are completely serious. Yeah. And to like pet names, that is something we will talk to. We'll have a podcast another day for pet names, funniest pet names, future podcast idea. But
Honey Boo,
yeah,
Princess,
yeah, Bookie Wookie, like all those ones.
Well, what's funny is, I had a really good thing I was going to talk about and I forgot it. Come on, TJ. I'm using my powers of podcasting to summon this idea from my head. Adam Stahl.
Okay, so anyways, speaking of Disney movies, they make me feel old too, because you see people talking about like The Lion King and all of that, and I'm like, oh, I love those movies. And they're like, oh, I remember as a kid watching Finding Nemo. I'm like,
Yes.
I watched that as a teenager. I'm like, do not bring that up. And Toy Story 3, I remember watching that, and it was like, conclusion, I'm like, okay. Because it felt like the three processes, right? And it's like, he was going to college, he was putting away his toys. I'm like, sorry, he was giving away his toys. You know what?
That's a good conclusion to the movie.
Exactly. And now people are like, oh yeah, I remember that. But I think is the one thing that made me feel the oldest. The number one thing that made me feel old was when I was working at Shell, and I was still in college, so I think it was about 22, and I was working with this person that I was at Shell, and we were attached to the Harveys, and I liked all my coworkers, still do, but we were talking. She told me her age. I was like, seriously? I'm like, so you remember Y2K? She's like, what's that? I'm like,
What's Y2K? Are you kidding me?
I just like drop my arms. I'm like, what do I say? You know, when the world was supposed to apparently end, like for the billionth time, you know, like everyone was freaking out. Like it was really big.
No, remember that. All right. I don't know. It's weird.
So what's your...
I don't remember what I just really good thing I was going to talk about.
Okay, but what's your number one thing that makes you feel old?
Okay.
Is it the...
Well, okay, I kind of remember what the thing I was going to talk about. And it's like when I talk to these kids, and this is also, it's kind of the number one thing that makes me feel old. It's the fact that I think it's more the fact of things I say, because they'll just look at me and be like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And I'm like,
yeah, you feel like they're normal references, like this is Sparta. It's
even
like,
something like that, like that's old.
Yeah,
like,
and you don't even think about it. You're like, no, I remember when that came out. I remember watching that on DVD and watched that. And I'm like, no, that feels old. I'm like, I remember Pokemon, and the one thing that throws me off about Pokemon, #Brandon Bowden, is that
Brandon Bowden.
Is I remember the first couple Pokemon movies. They've exploded since then, and I remember the card games. What throws me off is that the Ash Ketchum voice is different now, and I remember when it was a different person. I'm like, it throws me off when I hear it the odd time. I'm like, you know what? This is weird. Can't do this. And then people are like, they had a different voice actor. I'm like, oh my God. And then like I mentioned a movie and they're like, really? And again, back to the Disney movies thing is I remember the first Mulan movie when it came out, and I watched it on VHS with my family. Then they had a Mulan 2, which came out in like, I think it was like 2010s, maybe 2008.
Did they? I didn't even know they had.
Yeah, there's a second Mulan, and I remember that one. I'm like, one thing that popped in my mind, people remember that one before they'll remember the first Mulan. Yeah. And I'm like, no, that's gonna make me feel.
What's Mulan 2? What's funny for me is I think actually the number one thing for me is music, and I have to explain why, because I'll be talking to like say some like the metal kids, and they're like, oh yeah, like who are some of your favorite bands? And I'll be like, oh, you know, like I'll say like, oh, like Lamb of God, Killswitch Engage, bands like that, and they'll go, okay, cool, but like what about like more modern bands? I'm like, what are you talking about?
They just had an album.
Lamb of God's from like, you know, like then I'll think about it and I'll be like a band like Killswitch Engage, is that not a crazy modern band from what I think? And some of these kids will be like, they don't even know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, that's like 2006. And they're like, dude, that was like 10 years ago. And I'm like, what the fuck? Oh. Like it just, it boggles my mind. And the one like, I'll be like, oh, hey, you guys should check this album out. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. And they're like, oh, that's old man music. I'm like, that's Metallica. Like, yeah, it's old man music. I'm like, what is going on right now?
No, it's insane. Even with video games, there was one.
Yeah, that too.
Oh, we could go on like hours for that. But the one video game, hands down, that makes me feel old is Guitar Hero. Because I remember, like, when you were talking about your metal, right? There was one song I loved playing on Guitar Hero because it was just it was a little bit harder, but I was able to master it. Was "Raining of Blood" by Slayer, right? But I bet some kids these days they're like.
That's one band and one song that pretty much every generation knows, but I get what you're saying.
But no, it's like I remember playing that on Guitar Hero. Someone would be like,
What's Guitar Hero?
They'll be like, wait, you could play that on Guitar Hero? It's like, I played this in high school. I remember playing it like all the time. I'm like, like, of course, you're like musical god, and like Guitar Hero is my closest to playing a real instrument. But anyways, like I remember playing it. I'm like, because these days are just like, no idea what about that song. Like you could play it on a Guitar Hero. I'm like, oh my god.
Oh, it's like I was talking with a kid the other day about gaming, and he's like, oh yeah, I have my PS4 or whatever, and he asked a couple of some of my favorite games were, and he's like, oh yeah, those are great throwbacks. Like, and I was like, wait, hang on a second. These games, N64 games, okay, those are throwbacks. PS1 games, Xbox games, okay. Because one of the games I said was, the Elder Scrolls series. Oh yeah, those are great throwbacks. And I was like, Skyrim just came out. He's like, yeah, but you were talking about Oblivion. I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, it's a good throwback. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. I'm like, that was like 5 years ago.
You're like, I didn't play that when I was 5. I played that when I was in high school. Like that's like the
after high school.
That's like the Call of Duty franchise when I'm playing like Black Ops. I played the original Modern Warfare. I remember playing Call of Duty Big Red 1 on my PS2. I'm like, oh my god, I love this game. And now they're on like Modern Warfare like 8. I'm like
850.
I'm like, I played the first one, and then they're like, oh, we're giving it an HD update with all these things. I'm like, I still have my copy.
Yeah, I still have my copy. Why are you making me buy it again? Well, it's like,
well, no, it's like you still have the copy, and you're like, you make me feel old. Stop doing this. When you're like, it's getting an update, and something like the Disney stuff, like stuff, it's like it's going back in the vault. And you're like, I remember when it came out the first time.
I remember when it came out of the vault the first time. Well, it's like it's funny, like how like older things are coming back into style. Lately, I've been seeing RuneScape. Oh, speaking from Gigwebs, I've been seeing RuneScape everywhere. What is going on with that? But you just mentioned Splash Pants. Funny you say that, because today I just saw like a bunch of stuff about them. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And like, just hairstyles and stuff, and like I'm like, what the fuck? And like, oh, these are some serious throwbacks. And I'm like, I think it was Dom from Out of My League. Shout out to Dom and Out of My League when he was on, and kind of the music thing. I listed off a whole bunch of bands that to me are like modern metal bands, and his exact words were, "Yeah, man, like those are some serious throwbacks." And like I was like, what? And I literally said in the podcast, I'm like, oh, okay, like, damn.
And all of a sudden you're like,
yeah, 3 Days Grace, that's a serious throwback. I'm like, no, they're not.
And then you had to like pause the podcast. Guys, I have to go and lay in my room and just trying to recapture my mind, just go in there and like, am I really this old?
Am I really that old that people are considering bands that like I was in high school when they came out are throwbacks?
Yeah, that's like Blink-182. I'm like, I remember their last album. It's like before this one, and I'm like, oh my god, like seriously? And you're like, okay, this is good. Like the one song that made me feel really old was "What's My Age Again," because they were talking about 23, and I remember being able to listen to that when I'm there, and now I'm thinking, holy crap, I can't really listen to that song anymore because I'm older than that song.
That's when you know you're old. That's when you know you're like, shit. But like, even like a band like Sum 41, that they just had like their little comeback, and like there are kids I'm seeing, they're posting stuff like, oh yeah, like some serious throwback pop punk, and I'm like, what? Like, no, like what is going on? And it bothers me, and I'm like, no.
And you wonder why so many people just want to stay in their basements. It's like, no, I don't want to go out in society. It's like, they're not like me. They're different.
Yeah, they're not like me. They're different. They think that, like, Oblivion is an old throwback game, and they think that, like
3 Days Grace is an old band, and you're like all retro. The oldest, okay, I know we talked about the games and like people saying that's made us feel the oldest. The oldest, we talked about music a little bit, but the oldest music that kind of made, like, what made me feel old was I was going to the gym, Good Life Fitness, keep your calories low and your gains huge, is I was, they play music there, right? And on the TV, it said JoJo. I remember watching JoJo on Much On Demand randomly, and when she first was getting her, like, stuff. Yeah. She had like one hit. I remember the music video. All of a sudden I saw her again. I'm like, when's the last time I saw that? I was like, I was 14. I'm like, that was 11 years ago. JoJo does not look the same as 11 years ago.
It's not like JoJo.
I was like, oh my God, I am honestly, like, again, it's like, it's not like we're in our 80s, but we just feel like, where has the time gone?
I feel I'm 25 and I feel sometimes like I'm in my 40s.
Yeah.
Just because of how old some people, because so much has happened.
Yeah. And too, it's like, we're like in the in-between generation. Like my mom, who knows if she'll watch this, well, listen to, and she talked about like partying like all night. I'm like, my God, when it hits 11 o'clock, I'm ready in bed watching like Netflix or something like that. I'm like, I can't stay up till 2 a.m. anymore. And like people are like, oh, just get the energy drinks. I'm like, you guys are animals.
Do you want to die? Well, like something funny. I think we'll end off with this little story here. That my grandma actually said to me. I was saying to her, like, I'm like, oh, I have to, because I get up at 4 a.m. to go to work sometimes, whatever. Like I have to go to bed by like 9. And she just looks at me and she says, "You're 25. Yeah. You should be able to go to bed at 2 a.m, wake up at 3, and be able to go for another 24 hours. She's like, you're old. Like, you're old, man, in a young man's body. And I was like, shit. And it's so true.
Yeah, you're like, Grandma, stop it.
It's true, too, because, like I was saying earlier about training a kid at my work, and I really remembered this thought. And I brought him into the washroom, like to just train him some stuff. And I said, okay, so grab the broom and we're going to sweep. And this kid looks me right in the eye, this 17-year-old kid. And he just looks at me like I'm looking at you right now. And I said, what? He's like, I'm like, you don't know how to sweep a floor? And he's like, no, why would I? All right, so I like show him how to sweep the floor. Like, okay, so now I'm going to have you clean the toilet. You know how to clean the toilet? Why would I know how to do that? I'm like, because you're a teenager and you should be doing it. Like, and just as the night progressed, I would ask him to do these tasks. Take out a garbage bag. And he just would stare at me. Like, I don't know how to take out a garbage bag. I'm like, you don't know how to take something out of a garbage can and put something back in. Why would I know how to do that? Walking by and he drops something. Hey, man, pick it up. Why? So it's like, I guess it's a generational thing. I don't know. It confuses me. If there's any younger people who are listening who have listened and have some rebuttals perhaps to what we have said, or you may have some answers, or if you are somebody who's older who may have some answers for us.
Or you feel older, tell us what makes you feel old.
Yes. Let us know what makes you feel old. You can always hit me up at any of the social medias or email me. I will make sure Adam sees them as well. Yeah,
and the one little Timbit, I'll put it in there. I know people say it's a different thing. I call it a Timbit. I'm Canadian,
Timbit,
is
some back bacon there, hoser.
I'll paint your fancy.
I'll paint your fancy there, bud,
is that they're finding a rise of fast food joints because more and more kids don't know how to really cook. Yeah. They can do maybe craft dinner or soup, but to cook fresh chicken, even like doing a proper salad or something like that, people can't do that.
Something so simple.
So they're saying it has increased outrageously the number of people who eat out. I think it's increased 30% in like the last 10 years.
Because people like of our generation even can't cook. I mean, I can't say anything.
Yeah.
But like I'm figuring it out. Yeah. And I can cook enough to get by. And like luckily Sam can cook. So it's like whatever.
Yeah, but it's like a little bit. But yeah, that's the issue with the age. It's like you just don't know how anymore. And just to bring up to your point, it's like, so one of those things that's now, we're kind of being baby, but at the same time too, everything's automated, everything's quick. So now it's like, when you are on your own, you're like, I can't do the basic tasks.
I can't do anything.
So it's like, at least now you have Google and everything like that. You can Google, but now that's the other issue is now you're worried about how you're cooking it. Cause all of a sudden beside Google is, like cooking chicken. You have how to cook chicken. Right beside Google is what happens if you cook chicken wrong.
Yeah.
It's like,
if I don't overcook this chicken, it's going to turn out shitty. That's my problem. Well, that's why I don't like to Google recipes anymore.
Well, you're like, okay, good chicken. Okay, it tastes great. It will fill you up.
Nice and moist.
Yeah. Bad chicken. Tastes dry or it kills you. Okay. Other
shit. All right.
Was it? And then beside Google is related searches is, how do I know if chicken gave me food poisoning? And besides that, it's Dr. MD is, can chicken give me cancer?
It's funny because it's all true, and it's also this instant gratification thing.
Yeah.
Work with a kid or whatever, they do one job I ask them to do, and then they kind of stand there for a second, and I'm like, go, motherfucker. And like, I obviously don't say that to them, but like, I'm like, what are you doing? And they kind of walk around, they go around, and I've realized what it is they're doing. They're waiting for me to basically go, okay, good job. Now go, good job wiping down that one table out of 30. Now go do the other 30.
Yeah.
And then they'd stop and look at me, make sure they're doing it right. And that's not their fault, I don't think.
No.
Because they're used to going on Twitter and going, oh, everyone check out this boss painting I made. And then they'll put up on Instagram and they'll get like 40 to 50 strangers like it and they'll comment, oh, good job or whatever. Or they'll get spam comments saying they can make $30 a month, whatever.
Or if you follow this website, you'll be able to attract hot women.
Yes, there are hot singles in your area.
Click this
ad for hot singles in your area. Hot shingles or singles? that's a very big difference there.
Yeah. Well, we're getting older, so we need to learn how to work on our roofs. Oh my god.
But it's just funny. Like it's the instant gratification thing, and it's crazy to think how much things have changed. How we've seen this transformation from like the VHS and DVD era to the digital era, and all this crazy stuff. It's so insane. If you told me 10 years ago that like DVDs and stuff like that would be completely obsolete, I'd be like, no, you're insane. Look what happened. Streaming's the way to go. So that's crazy, but we're going to hang her up here. So Adam, thanks for hanging out and helping me not feel as old alone.
That's so fine. I will start telling the kids to get off my lawn soon.
So we'll do that together.
All right.
But all right, guys, so that was my conversation with Adam, talking about feeling old and a whole bunch of other BS. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Always a good time having Adam on whenever I can. He's always a good guest, always a good person to have on. Been a friend of mine for years and years. And I mean, he's 2027's Man of the Year, ladies and gentlemen. So why not have him on the podcast? So again, hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. Thank you all again so much for tuning in, regardless of how you are listening. If you're listening on the SoundCloud, be sure to give the Hotter Show a follow and leave a like on this podcast. Comment, always, of course. Let me know maybe what makes you feel old and that kind of thing. If you're listening on the YouTube, then be sure to leave a like or dislike on this video, depending on what you thought of it. Of course, also comment. Let me know what makes you guys feel old and all that kind of thing. And of course, subscribe to the Harder Show on YouTube. We're building the YouTube brand up as much as we possibly can. And of course, last but not least, if you're listening on the iTunes, which you guys know is the easiest way to listen to the Harder Show, be sure to hit the subscribe button so that you don't even have to think about it. Every single time a new episode is uploaded, it will be downloaded to the device of your choosing once you have it set up for that. While you're there, maybe leave a little rating for the Harder Show as well. Definitely always appreciate it. And if you're listening on some other app that I don't know about, right on. If you're listening on Podcast Addict, which is actually like one of my favorite apps that I've been using lately. Not a sponsor of the Harder Show or anything, don't worry. It's just an app I've been using. It's a free app, and I just really enjoy it. I really like it. So, shout outs to Podcast Addict. But that is going to do it for me here today, guys. Thank you all again so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys next time on The Harder Show. Take it easy.